Hey, sculpture students, I'm going to make one more video on trimming today. This one is the bowl that I threw in a previous video. So I've got my bowl here, okay? It's got a pretty large area on the bottom, so I can make a really nice foot. So again, if you're making a foot, you're making an area that your piece is going to sit on, right? So like this bowl has a kind of a larger foot that I think will probably look good with the bowl I have right now. Here's one that is not glazed, so you can see a little bit easier. But again, we're just trying to create a little circle area that it can sit flat on. This one, I kept it very, very simple, but you can also bring that foot in pretty far, make a really defined foot. It's up to you and what you want your design to look like. With bowls, it's pretty easy it's easier to trim than a really tall vessel, right? Because gravity is actually working with you. If the inside of your bowl has a lot of stuff to deal with, you can kind of trim that a little bit on the wheel. It's a little bit trickier, but oftentimes I will deal with that by hand, and I will just use the wheel to get this bottom part figured out. All right, so my piece is, it's a good leather hard. It's not too wet, it's not too dry. I think this will go pretty easily. I'm testing kind of the thickness down here, so the very edge is fairly thick. So I should be good to go and have a lot of room to work with. So I'm going to move this camera down. So again, the first step that we can take is try to center it just based on these concentric circles that we have and see if I get it without having to do the tapping method. So I'm going to turn it back on. That's pretty good. Now again, we're centering the weight, not the lip. So I am going to do the tap. So I'm going to tap it off center. And then slowly but surely, there, it caught it. So it's nice and centered now. So I'm working with a centered piece. The weight is centered. Again, I'm going to have some clay here. I'm going to make some fat coils. I'm going to push down on this on the top, put the coils around it, push into the metal and the wheel, not the piece itself. And I'm going to do all the way around. Especially if you have something bigger, it's okay to really kind of surround it. Don't get crazy. You don't want to go too far up the sides, but it's okay to make sure that that thing is not going to fly off on you or become uncentered while you're trying to do your work. So take the extra little time and make sure that it's going to stay where you want it to. Okay? All right, again, I'm going to do my tapping here. Listening for sound, right? Duller sound here. Higher pitch there. So I know it's thinner there than it is there. That's another way to check your thickness. If you're wondering how thick it is, try and listen for that sound. Okay. So I'm going to bring my bowl in a little bit. So I'm going to make my foot come in a bit. So I'm going to draw my outside circle. I'm going to draw my inside circle. This clay is probably about perfect for doing this. And then I have my handy dandy loop tool. I have my larger loop tool if I need it. I've got my rib if I want. And there's also other fun things you can do with texture that we could get into later. But step one, I'm going to clear out the inside of this again. So I'm going to start right in the middle. Nice even pressure. My left hand is steadying my right hand. And I'm overlapping my lines. Sorry, there's a shadow there. Let's see if I can undo the shadow. There we go. I'm overlapping my lines, trying to get it even. I'm going to turn my speed up a little bit. Now, when it comes to speed, when you are trimming, sometimes it's nice to start slow, but the faster it's going, the more times it's going underneath the loop tool, right? So speed can actually be your friend. Especially if you get the area decent, like once you've got it fairly level, speed can be really helpful. So it's digging out pretty nicely here. I'm going to do this one more time. Just clear it out. So once you have it level, instead of going one at a time, you can kind of just drag that loop tool slowly off to the side. And you can see that as I build up a ribbon of clay, I'm removing it from my loop tool so it's not getting in the way of the work I'm trying to do. Okay? Now listen to that. I'm still okay. Slightly higher pitch now though. So as you work on more pieces, you'll get more and more comfortable with that. All right, so let's dug out about, I'd say like 1/8 of an inch or more. So it's pretty good. Now I'm going to work my way down the side. So I have a lot to clear off here. But again, I'm going to start at some place that's level and work my way to these areas that are not as level. And I'm going to push down next to that line and then go over. So push down next to that line a little bit and then work my way over. Again, we're holding the loop tool close to the loop. If I try and hold it back here, we're going to get chattering. I can actually show you that in a moment because it can be really cool and decorative, but if you're not trying to do that, it's very frustrating. Pushing down next to the line and then out and over. And I'm moving the loop tool slow and the wheel fast, and they should work together really well in that fashion because I don't have to do a lot of work. My tool and the wheel are doing the work. When you ask people like, how did you do that? Well, it's the patience in trusting your tools and knowing how to use them. All right, that's pretty good so far. But again, I'm going to try and create a foot that really kind of sticks up. So I'm going to work this area a little bit extra. I think I'm going to switch to this round one and have it really be graceful going down the side. Now, as you're doing this, you might feel in some areas like, oh, my loop tool is like jumping around just a little bit. And that could mean it's not perfectly round, and that's okay. The higher speeds will point out the imperfections more, but again, nothing we make is perfect. It's just not going to be. Looks pretty good so far. I'm going to do a little bit more on that. Because I want this foot to kind of stick up. Now you can see again, I got my left thumb right next to the loop tool, where my right hand is adding the pressure, right? So you have one hand, again, doing some skill work, and the other hand is doing some of the muscle work or the steadying work. Okay, this looks pretty good. Pretty nice, right? Get you a profile of it. Pretty good. But I want to really create a defined profile for this foot. So I'm going to work it one bit extra here. So I'm going to go right next to my foot area, and I'm really use that angle and push down and create a really defined foot. And then I'm just going to nice up the side a little bit, just cleaning it up. Now this is also where you could use your rib. Now the nice thing about the rib is it bends, right? You can bend it. So I can bend it to kind of fit the curve of my bowl. It picks up a little bit of that clay, and it can be a really helpful tool when just trying to smooth some areas out. Okay, so the last thing I want to do, or one of the last things, is I need to flatten this ring out. So again, I'm going to use the flat part of my loop tool. Okay, and again, steady, nice, even pressure. I'm creating that letter A here. Okay, so I've created a letter A between the loop tool and my left hand, thumb, and forefinger. And then I'm going to use this to help me steady and apply pressure. So it just sits nice and even. Flattens that out. Now the other thing you don't really want is like an edge, right? This edge here can be kind of sharp, so I'm just going to use my finger, round that out a little bit so I don't have a sharp edge. Now the clay's not quite dry enough to get some chattering, but I'm going to see if I can get some. So chattering is when you are using your loop tool and it is going to bounce around a little bit because you're not holding it down very much. So if I hold it back here, it's going to jump a little bit when I try and do it, or one of these. And so that means as it's going, it's going to create this pattern of texture, and that's called chattering. So let's see if I can get it with this larger loop tool. So instead of holding it right here and applying even pressure, I'm going to hold it back here. You hear that sound? That's because the loop tool is jumping around. So you just let the loop tool do what it's going to do. You can hear it. And that can create a little bit of a texture. It's kind of hard to see. Let me see if I can get a little bit more of it. I'm going to angle a little bit more. So I'm lightly holding it. You can see the loop tool kind of moving around a little bit. And then there's a sound. You can hear it. All right. So this one's basically done. I'll hold this up so you can see some of the texture. It didn't go too far in because the clay is still pretty on the wetter side of leather hard. It sometimes can work better when it's a little bit on the drier side, but maybe you can see there's a little bit of texture there now. Ooh, I got some clay on there. But there's a little bit of texture going that could be interesting when you go to glaze it. So again, if there's some stuff on the inside you want to nice up, some of this stuff you can just do by hand. Clean it out, make it nice. But that's it. That's how you can trim a bowl. Hopefully that was helpful. I'll talk to you guys later.